Deep within the African sanctuary, where nature's most extraordinary moments unfold away from prying eyes, something absolutely unprecedented was about to shatter everything scientists thought they knew about animal behavior. Ranger Logan had witnessed countless wildlife interactions throughout his 20-year career, but nothing, absolutely nothing, could have prepared him for what he'd discover that morning. The air hung unusually still, creating an eerie silence that made Logan's skin crawl. Even the birds seemed to hold their breath. That's when he spotted Rocco, the sanctuary's most dominant chimpanzee, moving with unusual purpose through the dense foliage. Something was different about the alpha's demeanor, his typical confident swagger replaced by something that looked almost urgent. Following his instincts, Logan trailed behind Rocco, his heart pounding as they ventured deeper into uncharted territory. What he witnessed next would become the most documented animal rescue story in scientific history, leaving researchers speechless and forcing them to completely rewrite their understanding of interspecies relationships. The chimpanzee led him to a scene so shocking, so impossible according to every textbook ever written, that Logan initially questioned his own sanity. But what happened in those next crucial moments would prove that nature still holds secrets that defy human comprehension. And some bonds transcend every known biological law. There, tangled in a cruel poacher's snare, lay a magnificent male leopard, bloodied, exhausted, and teetering on the edge of death. The wire had cut deep into his hind leg, and his labored breathing told Logan this wasn't just another routine animal rescue. This was a race against time. But what absolutely floored the experienced ranger wasn't the leopard's dire condition. It was Rocco's behavior. The alpha chimpanzee sat mere feet from one of nature's most feared predators, completely calm, as if he belonged there. His dark eyes never left the leopard's face, and every few minutes he'd emit soft, reassuring grunts. Logan had never seen anything like it. In all his years studying primate behavior, this defied every instinct these species should have toward each other. "Base, this is Logan," he whispered into his radio, trying not to disturb the surreal scene unfolding before him. "I need the medical team out here immediately. We've got a leopard caught in a snare. But there's something else. Rocco's here, and he's actually helping somehow." The response crackled back with disbelief, but Logan couldn't tear his eyes away from what he was witnessing. Rocco seemed to understand the leopard's pain, occasionally reaching out, not to touch, but to hover his hand just inches away, as if offering comfort through proximity alone. When the veterinary team arrived with tranquilizer equipment, Logan expected Rocco to flee. Chimpanzees typically scatter when humans approach with unfamiliar gear. Instead, Rocco positioned himself where the leopard could see him, never breaking that inexplicable connection they shared. "Easy, big guy, Doctor," Martinez whispered as she prepared the dart gun. The leopard's golden eyes darted frantically between the approaching humans and the chimpanzee beside him. That's when something remarkable happened. Rocco began making gentle clicking sounds, the same vocalizations mother chimps use to calm their young. The leopard's breathing slowed. His thrashing ceased. Logan watched in amazement as the big cat's heart rate visibly stabilized, his panic dissolving under Rocco's steady presence. Dr. Martinez exchanged glances with Logan, both recognizing they were witnessing something that would challenge every textbook on animal behavior. The tranquilizer took effect gradually, and as the leopard's eyes grew heavy, Rocco never moved from his post. Even as the medical team carefully cut away the wire snare and examined the wounds, the chimpanzee maintained his vigil, occasionally touching his own chest and then gesturing toward the leopard, almost as if he were trying to communicate that everything would be okay. Loading the unconscious leopard onto the transport stretcher should have been the end of Rocco's involvement. Wild chimpanzees don't follow human vehicles, don't concern themselves with the fate of other species once they're out of sight. But Rocco wasn't following any of nature's established rules that day. As the medical team's jeep slowly navigated the bumpy sanctuary roads toward the recovery facility, Logan spotted movement in his rearview mirror. There was Rocco, knuckle-walking behind the vehicle at a respectful distance, refusing to be left behind. When they stopped to check the leopard's vitals, Rocco would stop too, waiting patiently until they resumed their journey. "This is impossible," Dr. Martinez muttered, shaking her head as she monitored the leopard's vital signs. "His stress hormones should be through the roof right now, but look at these readings. They're almost normal. It's like having that chimp nearby is actually helping him heal." By the time they reached the medical enclosure, word had spread throughout the sanctuary. Staff members gathered at a distance, phones ready to document what many were already calling the most extraordinary interspecies interaction they'd ever witnessed. But Logan knew this was just the beginning. As they settled the leopard into his recovery space, Rocco took up position just outside the fence, settling into what looked like a permanent watch. The chimpanzee's eyes never left his unlikely patient, and something in his posture suggested this vigil was far from over. What none of them realized was that this mysterious bond between predator and primate had roots deeper than anyone could imagine, and the story behind their connection would soon reveal secrets that would shake the very foundations of everything they thought they knew about animal memory and emotion. The leopard's recovery should have been a solitary affair. Big cats heal best in quiet isolation, away from the stress of other animals. But Rocco had other plans entirely. Every single morning, like clockwork, the alpha chimpanzee would make his way to the medical enclosure and settle into his self-appointed guard position. Logan watched this daily ritual with growing fascination. Rocco wasn't just casually visiting, he was maintaining a vigil that seemed almost protective. The chimp would arrive at sunrise, position himself on a fallen log that gave him a perfect view of the recovering leopard, and simply watch for hours. Sometimes he'd bring fruit, eating slowly while keeping his eyes fixed on his unlikely patient. Other times, he'd groom himself methodically, but his attention never wavered from the enclosure. "It's been 12 days straight," Logan told Dr. Martinez as they observed Rocco's morning routine. "I've never seen behavior like this. He's acting like a concerned family member." What puzzled Logan even more was the leopard's response. Most big cats become agitated when other animals linger near their space, but this leopard seemed genuinely comforted by Rocco's presence. His healing progressed remarkably fast, and whenever Rocco was nearby, his stress indicators dropped to levels they'd never seen in a recovering wild animal. The mystery gnawed at Logan. In his 2 decades of wildlife management, he'd learned to trust his instincts, and every instinct told him there was more to this story. That evening, he decided to dig deeper into the sanctuary's records, searching for any clue that might explain this impossible bond. Hours of paperwork yielded nothing until Logan stumbled across a file from 7 years earlier. A report about an orphaned leopard cub found near the sanctuary's perimeter. His heart raced as he read the details. The cub had been too young to survive alone, but too dangerous to keep permanently. They'd housed him temporarily in a holding enclosure while arranging transport to a specialized facility. "My God," Logan whispered, his hands trembling as he flipped through faded photographs. There it was, a tiny spotted cub pressing against the chain-link fence, and on the other side, a young chimpanzee reaching through the gaps with curious fingers. The records showed the cub had spent 6 weeks at the sanctuary before being relocated. During that time, Several staff members had noted the unusual friendship developing between the young leopard and Rocco, who was then just entering adolescence. They'd play through the fence, gentle pawing games, chasing each other along the barrier, even sharing food that Rocco would push through the wire mesh. Logan's discovery sent chills down his spine. This wasn't just any random act of interspecies compassion. This was a reunion. Rocco had recognized his childhood friend, now grown into a powerful predator, trapped and dying in the wilderness. The chimpanzee's behavior suddenly made perfect sense. He wasn't just helping a stranger, he was saving someone who'd once been like a brother to him. The next morning, Logan watched their interaction with new eyes. When Rocco made his soft clicking sounds, the leopard would respond with barely audible chuffs, the same communication pattern they'd developed as youngsters. When the chimp moved to his left, the leopard would shift position to maintain eye contact, as if they were continuing a conversation that had been interrupted years ago. "You remember him, don't you, boy?" Logan murmured, watching the leopard's ears perk up whenever Rocco vocalized. The big cat's golden eyes followed every movement his old friend made, and occasionally, Logan swore he could see something that looked almost like contentment in that fierce predator's gaze. But their peaceful reunion was about to face its greatest test. Dark clouds were gathering on the horizon, not from the weather, but from the very humans who'd once threatened the leopard's life. The poachers who'd set that snare weren't finished with their deadly work, and they were heading straight for the sanctuary. What would happen when Rocco's protective instincts collided with mortal danger? Their childhood bond was about to be tested in ways that would either destroy them both or prove that some connections transcend every boundary nature has ever established. 3 weeks into the leopard's recovery, Logan's worst nightmare materialized in the pre-dawn darkness. Motion sensors around the sanctuary's perimeter triggered silent alarms, and security cameras captured shadowy figures moving through the bush with deadly intent. The same poaching ring that had nearly killed the leopard was back, and this time, they weren't just setting snares. They were armed and heading straight for the medical facility. Logan's blood ran cold as he watched the security feed. 4 men, rifles slung across their shoulders, wire cutters in hand, were systematically dismantling the outer fence barriers. Their target was obvious. The recovering leopard represented a fortune in illegal wildlife trade, and they'd come to finish what their snare had started. "All units, code red," Logan radioed, his voice tight with urgency. "Armed poachers, southeast sector. They're heading for the medical enclosure." But even as backup units scrambled to respond, Logan knew they might not arrive in time. The sanctuary covered thousands of acres, and these men had clearly planned their approach to avoid the main patrol routes. What Logan hadn't anticipated was that Rocco had his own early warning system. The alpha chimpanzee's territorial instincts kicked into overdrive the moment the intruders crossed into his domain. From his sleeping tree near the medical facility, Rocco detected the unfamiliar scents and sounds long before any human technology could. His powerful frame tensed as he recognized the threat, not just to his territory, but to his vulnerable friend lying helpless in the recovery enclosure. Rocco's warning calls shattered the pre-dawn silence, starting as low growls that escalated into thunderous screams that echoed across the sanctuary. Within minutes, his vocalizations triggered a chain reaction throughout the chimpanzee community. The entire troop, 17 individuals strong, began responding to their alpha's distress signals. Logan watched in amazement as the sanctuary's chimpanzee population mobilized like a coordinated defense force. Led by Rocco, they swung through the canopy with military precision, positioning themselves between the poachers and the medical facility. Their calls weren't random noise, they were tactical communication. alerting each other to the intruder's exact location and movements. The poachers, expecting to encounter sleeping animals and minimal resistance, suddenly found themselves surrounded by furious primates dropping from the trees like special forces operatives. Rocco landed just 20 feet from the lead poacher, his massive frame silhouetted against the dawn sky, every hair on his body standing on end as he displayed the full intimidating power of an alpha male protecting his territory. "What the hell?" one poacher stammered, raising his rifle, but Rocco was already in motion. The chimpanzee's intelligence showed as he grabbed a fallen branch and hurled it with startling accuracy, striking the weapon from the man's hands. The other chimps followed their leader's example, pelting the intruders with rocks, sticks, and anything else they could weaponize. But it was what happened next that would become legendary footage, viewed millions of times across social media platforms worldwide. As the poachers regrouped and attempted to advance toward the leopard's enclosure, Rocco positioned himself directly in their path. The massive chimpanzee stood upright, beating his chest in a display of raw, protective fury that made it crystal clear they'd have to go through him to reach his friend. The lead poacher, desperate and cornered, raised his rifle toward Rocco. That's when the leopard, despite his injuries, rose to his feet inside the enclosure and released a roar that seemed to shake the very ground. The sound of pure predatory rage, combined with the sight of 17 chimpanzees ready for battle, finally broke the poachers' resolve. They fled into the bush just as Logan's security team arrived, but not before sanctuary cameras captured every moment of Rocco's incredible bravery. The footage of a chimpanzee risking his life to protect a leopard went viral within hours, sparking global conversations about animal intelligence, emotion, and the bonds that transcend species barriers. As the dust settled and the immediate danger passed, Logan found Rocco back at his usual post beside the leopard's enclosure. Both animals seemed to understand they'd just survived something extraordinary together. The leopard approached the fence where Rocco sat, and for a brief moment, they touched, paw to finger through the wire mesh, in what looked remarkably like a gesture of mutual gratitude and respect. But their incredible story was far from over. The viral footage had attracted worldwide attention, and now Logan faced an impossible decision that would determine whether these two remarkable animals could ever truly be free together, or if their bond would forever be confined behind barriers designed by human fear and misunderstanding. The viral footage changed everything. Within 48 hours, the sanctuary's phone lines were flooded with calls from news networks, wildlife documentarians, and animal rights organizations worldwide. Everyone wanted to know about the chimpanzee who'd risked his life to save a leopard. But Logan found himself facing an agonizing dilemma that no textbook had ever prepared him for. Standard protocol was clear. Once fully recovered, the leopard should be released back into the wild, far from human contact. Meanwhile, Rocco belonged with his troop in their designated territory within the sanctuary. Separating them seemed like the logical, safe choice. But Logan couldn't ignore what he'd witnessed. These weren't just two random animals who'd shared a moment of crisis. Their bond ran deeper than anything science currently understood. "We can't keep them together," Dr. Martinez argued during an emergency staff meeting. "A leopard, even a rehabilitated one, is still an apex predator. And Rocco, despite his protective behavior, is still a wild chimpanzee. The risks are astronomical." Oh, but Logan had spent weeks observing their interactions, documenting behavior that defied every established principle of interspecies relationships. The leopard's stress levels remained remarkably low in Rocco's presence. The chimpanzee showed none of the territorial aggression he typically displayed around other animals. They'd developed a communication system that seemed almost telepathic, subtle body language cues that suggested a level of understanding that shouldn't be possible between their species. That's when Logan proposed something unprecedented: a shared, protected enclosure within the sanctuary grounds. Not a cage or a zoo exhibit, but a carefully designed habitat large enough to give both animals the freedom to choose when and how they interacted. It would be monitored, controlled, but still allow them to honor the connection they'd rebuilt. The Sanctuary Board's initial reaction was predictably cautious. Insurance concerns, safety protocols, public liability, every practical consideration argued against Logan's proposal. But the worldwide attention their story had generated brought something the sanctuary desperately needed: funding. Donations poured in from people moved by the footage of Rocco's bravery. And with those resources came the possibility of creating something entirely new. Construction began on what would become known as the Harmony Habitat, a sprawling, multi-terrain enclosure featuring dense forest sections where Rocco could swing freely through the canopy, open grasslands where the leopard could roam and hunt, and neutral zones where they could meet safely if they chose to. The day of the release was unlike anything the sanctuary had ever experienced. Media crews from 6 countries gathered at respectful distances, while Logan's team made final preparations. The leopard, now fully healed and magnificent in his prime, paced restlessly in his temporary transport carrier. Rocco waited nearby, unusually quiet, as if he understood the significance of what was about to happen. "This is either brilliant or completely insane," Logan muttered to himself as he opened the leopard's carrier door. The big cat emerged slowly, golden eyes scanning his new territory with predatory assessment. For a moment, that seemed to stretch forever. He simply stood there, testing the air, processing the vast space now available to him. Then Rocco descended from a nearby tree, moving with deliberate calm toward his old friend. The two animals approached each other in open space for the first time since their childhood. No barriers, no restrictions, just two beings who'd chosen to trust each other against all odds. What happened next left even the most cynical observers speechless. The leopard, this powerful predator who could kill with a single swipe, lowered his massive head toward Rocco. The chimpanzee reached out and gently touched the leopard's forehead with his knuckles, a gesture so tender, so profound, that several hardened wildlife photographers openly wept behind their cameras. They established their coexistence naturally, instinctively. The leopard claimed the eastern sector with its rocky outcroppings and dense brush. Rocco maintained his territory in the western canopy. But every evening, as the sun set, they would meet in the central clearing, not out of obligation, but out of choice. Their story spread across every continent, inspiring legislation to protect wildlife, funding for anti-poaching efforts, and a new understanding of animal consciousness. But Logan made a crucial decision that preserved the integrity of their bond. No more cameras inside their habitat. Their daily lives would remain private, sacred, known only to the few caretakers who ensured their well-being. Years passed, and their legend grew, but the two friends aged gracefully in their shared sanctuary. Then, one misty morning, Logan arrived to find their enclosure empty. The specially designed barriers remained intact, the gates still locked, but Rocco and his leopard companion had vanished without a trace. Search teams found evidence of their passage leading deep into the protected forest beyond the sanctuary, paw prints and knuckle marks in the soft earth, following ancient animal paths toward the heart of the wilderness. They'd chosen freedom together, disappearing into the vast African landscape as mysteriously as their bond had first appeared. Some say they're still out there, an impossible partnership thriving in the wild places where human eyes can't follow. Others believe their story was always meant to be temporary, a profound reminder that nature holds mysteries far deeper than human understanding can fathom. What everyone agrees on is this: Rocco and his leopard friend proved that love, loyalty, and compassion aren't exclusively human traits. In a world often divided by differences, they showed us that the most powerful bonds transcend every boundary: species, instinct, and expectation. So here we are, at the end of this incredible animal rescue story that challenges everything we thought we knew about the natural world. Rocco and his leopard friend didn't just survive together. They chose each other, again and again, defying every scientific prediction and social barrier. But let me ask you something that's been weighing on my mind since I first learned about their story. What does this say about the emotional lives of animals we've barely begun to understand? If a chimpanzee can recognize a childhood friend after 7 years of separation, if he can risk his life to protect that friend from armed poachers, what other incredible bonds exist in the wild that we've never witnessed? Think about it. We humans pride ourselves on loyalty, on never forgetting those who matter to us. Yet here's Rocco, proving that these aren't uniquely human traits at all. Makes you wonder, doesn't it? How many other extraordinary relationships are happening right now in forests, savannas, and jungles around the world, completely hidden from our view? And here's what really gets me. Their story went viral because it seemed impossible. But maybe the impossible is more common than we think. Maybe we're the ones with limited vision, not them. What if animals have been forming these deep, cross-species friendships for centuries, and we've just been too busy categorizing and separating to notice? I want to know what you think. Have you ever witnessed an unusual animal friendship that made you question everything you thought you knew about wildlife? Drop your stories in the comments below. I read every single one, and some of your experiences might just become the inspiration for our next incredible story. But here's my bigger question for you. If Rocco could recognize and save his childhood friend after all those years, what does that tell us about memory, emotion, and consciousness in the animal kingdom? Are we seriously underestimating the mental and emotional lives of the creatures we share this planet with? And one more thing that's been bothering me: Logan made the choice to keep their later life private, away from cameras and crowds. Do you think he was right? Should some bonds remain sacred and undocumented? Or do we have a responsibility to share these stories to change how humans treat wildlife? Your thoughts could reshape how we approach wildlife conservation, animal rescue efforts, and our fundamental understanding of what it means to be conscious, emotional, and capable of love. If stories like this one fascinate you, if you believe animals are far more complex and emotionally intelligent than most people realize, then you absolutely need to subscribe to this channel and hit that notification bell. We're constantly uncovering incredible tales of animal intelligence, unexpected friendships, and rescue stories that will completely change how you see the natural world. Trust me, Rocco and his leopard friend are just the beginning. There are countless other animals out there proving every single day that the boundaries between species are far more fluid than we ever imagined. And I can't wait to share their stories with you. So, what do you say? Ready to dive deeper into the hidden emotional lives of animals? Subscribe now, because the next story we're investigating involves a wolf pack that adopted an orphaned bear cub. And what happened next will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew about predator relationships.